Good morning. Chase, can I get a thumbs up that you can hear me? Awesome. All right, good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us for our live webinar today. We do these about once a week. We've got a different series going. So today is our HubSpot Sage Intacct integration. Check out our website for our other live demos. We do this monthly, and like I said, just about every week we are doing a live demo on one of our pre-built integrations. So you'll notice the lines have been muted due to the size of the group. Hopefully by now you know how to use the Q&A section. Feel free to chat as well. I'll be keeping my eyes on both. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start with some introductions. All right, so I regret to inform you that Brent is not with us today. He's being a good salesman. He's on the road and traveling for a conference this week. But have no fear, you are in good hands with Managing Director Chase Friedman. Thank you for joining us today. A little bit about Chase, employee number 2, and the guy in charge when our founder Scott isn't around, probably a little bit even if he is. Chase and his team have built an award-winning integration practice that focuses on connecting Sage Intacct to other platforms through custom-built integrations, one of which we will be showcasing today. With more than 6 years of experience with Sage Intacct, specifically integrations, there is pretty much no part of the API that Chase and his team haven't touched. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it off to you, Chase.
Thanks, Mel. Brent isn't here. Say nice things about him. He's one of our account executives, great dude. Unfortunately, he's a Longhorn. So if you want to reach out to anybody, you can certainly reach out to me. I went to Texas A&M. Whoop. You've got my email on the screen. Grab it if you want to. Screenshot it. Certainly send something out afterwards. Anyway, Brent will be joining me on future ones. So if you want to meet him, we hang out often. So let's run through what we're going to cover today in the webinar. I'm going to give a brief introduction into integrations. It's almost a cliche term at this point, overused and sometimes confusing, right? So we're going to run through that. Then I'm going to give a live demo of our HubSpot Intacct, specifically with the contract module. We'll go from start to finish. We'll create some stuff in HubSpot. I'm going to sync it over to Intacct and the contract module, and then push stuff back into HubSpot. And we'll talk about, after that, we'll talk about some of the use cases, like what is possible. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go through everything, but we'll talk about Stripe and recurring billing and things like that, how we can make this a full life cycle. And you can just cut out, all of the other, programs or platforms or applications that you might use to do any kind of external billing type functionality. So all you need is HubSpot and Intacct. And then of course we'll have some Q&A. But before we do that, Mel's going to pull up a poll. The question is, which of the following is you? What's your biggest pain point, right? So select which one. If yours doesn't have anything to do with HubSpot or Intacct, obviously select something else, and then put it in the Q&A if this poll doesn't reach, speak to your specific problem. So give you guys a second. Let's see if we get any results. Mel, anything standing out?
Initially, we've got a couple votes for, I think this is the first one, getting the HubSpot deal over to Sage Intacct as a contract.
Cool. You're in for a treat because I'm going to show you exactly that on today's demo. We also do order entry as well. Anyway, so if you have other problems or other questions, certainly throw them in the chat right now. We'll catch those at the end. All right, a brief overview. Okay, so this is this is one of the main reasons why we've got into this gig to begin with. Nobody likes to enter data manually, and they definitely don't like to enter it twice, right? They call it double entry. But we've got a stat here, right? 1% is the average data entry error rate. So regardless of who you are, how good you are at it, 1 out of 100 entries is going to be wrong. right? And if you're doing 100 entries a day times 365 and one of those every day is wrong, right, you're going to create a lot of pain, especially if that doesn't get caught for more than a year. In fact, I had a client give me a ring last month complaining about some data that was incorrect going back into September of last year. And they had some data entry problems of their own. So this does happen. And that's why we're in this business. We want to get the manual piece out, right? And make it automatic and make it so that it repeats in the same way every time over and over again. Get this chat screen out of the way. Here we go. Integrations bring data and apps together, right? So you typically think about an integration, and standard integrations are things. You've got these connectors. The idea behind integrations in our world is to move the data in a way where that source system can send the data out, and the target system can receive the data in the way that it expects to receive it, right? Intacct, in this particular demo, Intacct is an ERP system, and HubSpot is a CRM, right? They don't really speak the same language. And so the integration, the idea behind what we do is to pick up the data, manipulate it, transform it, and then automatically bring it over in certain scenarios into Intacct and vice versa. So that's our goal. Now, there are multiple types of integrations that you might be aware of. There's obviously the packaged one. There's lots of standard integrations. These are easy to implement, but sometimes you're confined to the functionality, right? There's a box that you have to fit in, and if you don't fit in that box, it's not going to work for you. Or you force yourself to fit in that box, which you have to rebuild things, you have to change your processes to make it work. Maybe it doesn't even, fit your practice, your business practices, and you have to conform to somebody else's. It's always a challenge. You've got custom code, right? Everybody can write something from scratch, stick it on AWS and run it over and over again. Obviously, you have to have, some sort of resource or resources that can maintain that. So it's difficult to scale, right? You've got somebody that has all that knowledge in their head that, they might move on, and now you've got a code base that you don't know how to use, that you need to maintain, and, now you're stuck. There's another one that's it's old, but it's kind of making a resurgence, this RPA idea where it's robotics, but it's really somebody might go and click a mouse, right? They move the mouse over here, they click this, and they move over here and they copy and paste this. It's kind of literally following somebody on a screen and then doing that same thing over and over again. It's not necessarily new, but it's more so for like antiquated systems that don't have APIs, right? I need to screen scrape, or I need to grab stuff off of PDFs. This is less of an integration approach and more of a I need to replicate something somebody's doing over and over again because I can't connect them. And then you've got middleware. Middleware has been around for a long time. What's happened over the past few years is that it's become a low code, no code approach. What that means is essentially everything we do in our world is declarative. I point and I click. I might type some words, right? But I'm not coding anything. There's no code involved. The benefit to that is we and you guys don't have to hire, full stack developers, people that study, languages, coding languages all the time. You can hire business analysts. You can hire people that, understand the business process and understand the logic. Now, of course, there's a drawback here, right? There are fees that you have to pay. It's an annual fee, but just like any of these others, if you're going to integrate something, there's going to be some sort of annual fee involved, whether it's paying for a full-time resource, having a third party involved, right? Paying for that standard application. So this isn't new. It's just people don't think about, well, yeah, I need something to be maintained and keep the connections running. So that's middleware. All right. And this is why we kind of approach our ethos is to go with middleware. Ideally, the standard integration works for everybody. It doesn't, but where it does, that's actually what we will recommend because somebody else will maintain it, right? You're on that platform. And we're in this spot, we're in this world because there's plenty of times where it doesn't, right? So what we do is we connect your source data to your target data. In this case, we connect HubSpot and Intacct, right? And we can create single direction syncs. We can create real-time data syncing. We can do scheduled syncing. Because there's a custom sort of approach to this, we can match your business processes where you currently are, right? You don't have to change what you're currently doing. We can just come to you and get them connected. All right, so let's talk about what's possible with HubSpot and Intacct. I've got an ERD on the screen here, entity relationship diagram. These are the object names or the table names in these databases, right? So HubSpot, if you know anything about HubSpot, it's got a company, it's got a deal, you've got line items. Your line items are tied to products. Those are the standard objects. You've got a contact, right? In this integration that we build, where we connect Intacct contracts to HubSpot, we will create some custom objects to represent the contract and the contract lines, the invoice, right? And then we'll push data to and from Intacct. Now the idea, right, is that the deal and those line items become the contract and the contract lines. You'll use standard functionality to create those contract invoices with whichever transaction definition you choose, right? I'm going to show this on screen here live in just a second. Eventually, somebody makes a payment on that, whether it's through our Stripe connector, connecting Intacct and Stripe, or maybe you're taking in checks or wires or cash, right? Those AR payments then flow over to HubSpot to update the invoice to indicate that it's been paid. So this isn't to overwhelm you, it's just to give you an idea that this is pretty complex. We've got multiple data sets, multiple types of data, and within each of these objects, right, we've got many fields that we need to keep track of. So just to give you an idea what this looks like. Oh, I clicked on the link. I'm sorry about that. Get back in here. Okay, so common use cases. This is where things get really interesting because you can essentially create a full contract lifecycle management with these two systems alone. Now, if you want to tack on Stripe, you can do a full automated subscription billing where the HubSpot deal, right, creates the contract and creates the invoice. We automatically charge that person if they are in Stripe and have a payment method on file. When the contract gets renewed, we can automate the contract renewals if you want to, or you can maintain that accounting control. Those contracts, those renewal contracts, excuse me, then go back into HubSpot as a new deal, which then either automatically gets closed or your sales user goes in and closes that. And then the whole life cycle starts over again, right? So with HubSpot and Intacct, you can maintain a full life cycle of your contract. With HubSpot, Stripe, and Intacct, you can maintain a full subscription management platform without needing a Recurly, or you don't need Stripe billing. You don't need some of those other platforms that try to automatically collect payments. We just do it within these three systems. You don't need anything else. The other thing that is people don't think about is the amendments and the debookings that happen on your contracts. Now, some of you may not have those issues, right? But those are pretty challenging when it comes to keeping track of the accounting on those contract lines, making sure everything lines up, that the revenue schedules are good, that you're not overstating your revenue, right? When somebody debooks something. And then on top of that, we can implement or connect to every single dimension, every UDD, user defined dimension, and even custom objects inside of Intacct. So there's a lot of things that we can do here. These are just the common ones that we see often. All right, so let's hop into that live demo. I'm going to back out of my screen here, and I'm going to close the ERD that popped up, and we're going to hop into HubSpot. Let me zoom in a little bit. And let's start with a company that I created earlier, Sweet Baby Ray's. We're big barbecue fans here in Texas. This is a live demo, and I did test it right before we hopped on the phone. So hopefully nothing blows up. Anyway, the goal here, yeah, cross fingers. Something I already did was sync Sweet Baby Ray's. They're a barbecue sauce company. If you don't know about them, try them out. Good, cheap barbecue sauce. I've already synced them over to Intacct, so we've already got a customer ID. So what I'm going to do is create a new deal here, and I don't know, we'll call it, I don't know, webinar. Can't spell webinar test. Now, we're not going to go through the order entry version that we have. We're going to hit the contracts side of this. We can just go straight into order entry. I'm going to do contracts. And let's see, I'm going to leave amount blank, priority, I don't know, high. We're going to add a, let's see, a workspace subscription, add in 5, and we're going to go with that. So create. Now, at this point, right, your sales cycle starts, you're emailing, your sales users emailing, having meetings, working it through. I'm going to skip all of that, and I'm going to go straight to getting the deal set up so I can sync it over. I'm going to start with setting my contract start and end date. There are quite a few more fields that we would probably discuss if we were going to do this for you, but since I do this often, I'm just going to set the things that I know. And save that. So just 3 up top. Of course, there are more that need to be set. I do have some being set statically. I'm going to go into this and I'm going to set a custom start date on my line item. I'm going to come in and set my end dates because my contract lines can have different start and end dates, right? I'm going to say we're going to bill monthly. And term is 12 months. Save this. Now, this is something that we can automate, right? Or if you want your sales users to have the flexibility to dictate what those are, there's a couple of different scenarios we can do there. But let me save this. It's going to update that deal amount for me. We're going to go back to the deal. And what we're going to do is we're going to sync this guy. Oops, there we go. Now, this could also happen automatically, right? When the deal gets, your sales user closes the deal, right? They get their contract signed, maybe through PandaDoc or DocuSign or whatever tool you use. Maybe that automatically sets the deal to close one. We can automatically then sync this. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just doing it manually, right? So I'll save this record. Now, what this is going to do is trigger the integration to run and then send out a variety of things to Intacct. Keep in mind, we've got multiple objects that we have to sync, right? Not only the customer, but the contact. We got to make sure that all these items exist in Intacct and make sure we've got correct item IDs. We got to then create the contract, and then we got to create the contract lines. So let's hop over into Intacct. It's just a simple demo environment. If you already have Intacct, you might see a lot more here because I have a demo environment that has everything enabled. So you might see more here than you normally do. And I'm going to hop into the contracts module, and we're going to type in sweet, little %. And there's my webinar test. There's my 2 other ones that I did to make sure that it actually works. Hop in, view this contract. Now, some of these things have already been set either statically, right, or I predefined them. I've got my contract line. I've got my start and end date set for my revenue template, right? So my revenue recognition schedule is already set up. And so what I'm ready to do now, this is now kind of transitioning into standard functionality of Intacct. I'm going to set my HubSpot sales invoice. I come in and set Sweet Baby Ray's, right? And I'm going to generate some invoices. This piece too can be automated. We can automate this. We don't have a ton of people doing that, but it can be automated, right? To automatically send out to create the invoice that we can then automatically charge with our Stripe integration. But we're going to keep it pretty low key here. So we did our invoice run. Now this works with any transaction definition. You might have multiples, you might just have one, or you just use the standard one. That's fine too. We can work with all of those. So let's go look at this invoice, right? Let's just check it out real fast. Sweet baby raise, looking good, right? We've got a workspace subscription line item here for $22.50. Now what this is going to do, if we had Stripe enabled here, I was going to demo Stripe, right? We'd send this out to Stripe to create a link that we could then send out. If the customer had a credit card method or a payment method on file, we could auto charge them if we wanted to. I'm going to skip that because we don't have a ton of time. And I'm going to hop back over into our deal, and we now have a HubSpot invoice, right? Our HubSpot sales invoice. There's not a ton on here. The main goal is to demonstrate, right, that we sync this back over, and then we can keep track of the amount due. Like I mentioned, let me go back to the ERD. We'll sync, if we created a payment, right, the payment would sync over and update the amount. We do have the ability to create another custom object to keep track of payments. We typically don't do that because as of right now, you only get 10 custom objects in that enterprise model. I'm sure they'll sell more at some point. Anyway, we just don't want to use a ton of those because you might need them for something else. Anyway, all that said, I'm going to skip making the payment, right? We make the payment and it update the invoice. It's very straightforward. And let's hop back into the deck here. So I think we're just about done. Mel, any questions that have popped up in chat or sent to you directly?
Yes, I think this is one we get like 100% of the time. So how long does it take to implement something like this?
Great question.
You're on mute.
That's like a cliche thing too. Like, oh, you're on mute. It's a thing. Yeah. That's a great question. It varies, right? I could give a ballpark. It's typically 2 to 3 months to get this up and running. The majority of the time is us understanding your business processes, how you've got HubSpot set up, how you've got Intacct set up. And then a large chunk of that time is you guys actually doing the testing. You need to make sure that this conforms to the way that you want it to, the way that you currently work and the way that you expect it to work. So majority of that time is really on you guys to test. You can test for 1 day, you can test for 4 weeks. It's really up to you on how long that 2 months kind of stretches into 3 or 4. On average, I'd say it's probably somewhere around 90 days, which is the typical number that Intacct will say when they're implementing Intacct. So we're pretty closely aligned on that front. Of course, things can pop up, right? Or you might want more things connected, which obviously will take more time. But yeah, I'd call it 2 to 3 months, and on average, 90 days.
Right, and that's partly helped by the fact that it is a standard, or what we call kind of a standard or package integration. We've done enough reps, right, with enough clients that we know typically what, we kind of know the guardrails, but like you said, there's all these unique, business processes that then we go in and help turn on or off within that standard integration. So that makes sense. Okay, one more question, direct. We keep track of opportunities in Salesforce. These sync over to deals in HubSpot. My question is, can the integration be built between Intacct and Salesforce instead, then sync over to HubSpot?
Yeah, we actually have HubSpot and Salesforce. So we use Salesforce to do our deal management, and we use HubSpot to do our marketing side of things. We can connect anything with an API. We can match like I said, we can match your business process to meet you where you are at, right? We are starting to see a lot of this same type of question in people coming to us. It's kind of old school is, hey, can we connect this and this? New school is, hey, I've got data in, 4 different spots. I have a prospect right now that has data in 11 different systems that they want us to connect with. Anyway, the new school is, right, people are starting to diversify where the data is stored, essentially taking the best of breed and platforms and understanding, right, Intacct's really good at accounting, but not necessarily at CRM, right? And not necessarily at collecting payments, because Stripe is better at that, or Authorize.net. Anyway, we're starting to see a ton of that. Salesforce and HubSpot and Intacct, a 3-way integration, is something that we're starting to see a lot of.
Cool. And then I think you may have already answered this one, but the last question is, you mentioned something about Stripe. Is it possible to automatically collect payments if we have their credit card info on file?
Yeah. So Stripe has like 80 different payment methods. WeChat, WePay, all of those things. Once they make a payment, it stores that payment method in Stripe for you then to use again down the road. I think some of those, somebody could probably roast me. Some of those I don't think stores, but for the most part, like if you enter a credit card number, it gets stored in Stripe. And then you can use that payment method over and over again. Well, obviously within the bounds of whatever your agreement states, right? But the idea with the contract invoicing is that we can, what Stripe calls auto advance, we can auto advance it and then automatically collect that charge, create the AR payment, and then have that payment and that invoice sync over to HubSpot. So essentially you've got that full subscription, that full life cycle subscription management, and you never have to reach out to the customer. Now you might send them an invoice, say, thanks for sending me your money automatically. But that's what we're starting to see a lot of. People want to automatically collect the payments, right? To bring down their AR aging reports because the customer's already agreed to pay. So, if you have their payment method, then let's go ahead and collect the money. And then of course, if not, if you can't collect, maybe the credit card's expired, right? We can get that link for you to then send out the invoice and say, hey, we couldn't charge your card, you still owe us money. Here's your invoice, and here's a pay now button to make a payment, right? And Stripe, they'll click on the link, they'll type their credit card information directly into a Stripe website, so you don't have to worry about any kind of compliance, right? They make the payment comes in and creates an AR payment inside of Intacct, which then of course syncs over to HubSpot. So multiple scenarios, right, where the happy path doesn't work, we've got covered.
Awesome. All right, we had another really good one come in while you were talking. So will this create an invoice automatically once the HubSpot talks to Intacct based on how you define in the contract module? And then follow up to that, how does the invoice get delivered to your clients, and do you have to email that to the client? I think there's a few different aspects to that one.
Yeah, the invoice in Intacct, so that's what most people will use as an accounting control to prevent automated invoices, right? They want to check to make sure that the contract lines are good. It is possible for us to do those invoice runs automatically. The Intacct API does allow for us to do that. I've seen a couple of clients where they've got, this one scenario where it's always the same amount, right? It comes through the website. There's not a lot of variables in that contract, right? Generate the invoices right away through automation, go get the payment, right? But then they've got their more complex contracts. So we call those record types in Salesforce, right? Just a different type of contract. And so the automation would know, okay, well, these are the easy ones. Let's do those and generate those invoices automatically. And then seeing the other type of contract and understanding that, okay, no, let's not generate the invoices automatically on that front. Both of those are possible, mix and match, right? Mel, what was the last part of that question?
About how the invoice gets delivered to your client. Do you have to email it? What are the options there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't know if the Intacct API allows us to send out an email using standard functionality. I'd have to look that up. If you're using Stripe, you can automatically send out an invoice, right? When we generate the Stripe invoice, you can manually send out the invoice using standard functionality. So let me actually pull that up real quick because we've got just an extra amount of time. Right inside of your order entry module, let's go find that HubSpot invoice that I generated, and we'll view it. And in here, you can print email, right? So this is a standard. This is where we've got our Stripe piece connected for that Pay Now button. Anyway, I'm not sure if I can do this automatically. I'm not sure if I can, what's a better way to say that? I'm not sure if I can use this standard functionality to send out the email. We can build something, right, that grabs the PDF from Intacct, attaches it to an email, right, and then sends it out from your email address or, whatnot, to do that automatically. Now, if you Stripe, I said, like I mentioned, Stripe can, if you set it up, will send out that invoice for you. Most of our folks turn that off. But if you're not using Stripe, right, we can build an automation that sends it out and give you controls to either prevent that from happening, or you can define scenarios where that happens or does not happen. All things are possible, right? That's what's great about what we do. We can meet you where you're at. You can tell us what your business process is, and then we can map or build an automation that does exactly what you're looking for.
All right, one more. Is Stripe the only payment system feeding to Intacct? Once the payment is posted in Intacct, does it make the journal entries automatically? So I wonder if this is for multiple payment types too. So if you have more than just Stripe.
If you have more than just Stripe or more than one Stripe account, Stripe is the one that we've got a kind of a pre-built automation in place. We've done Authorize, we've done PayPal, we've done you name it, we've probably done it. PayTrace is another one. Serve First is another one. There's a ton of payment gateways. Anyway, if they have an API, right, we can do it. If you're looking for standard functionality that kind of connects those things, there's not a ton of options out there, mainly because the APIs that are available are very different. Even from Stripe to Authorize, what you can and can't do is vastly different, which makes it a challenge to kind of offer the same sort of functionality across payment gateways, payment processors. You mentioned the journal entries, though. The journal entries get created automatically, and that's one of the beauties behind Intacct, is that everything you do, right, every time you create an invoice, every time you create a payment, it's creating the correct journal entries on the back end for you automatically. You don't have to do anything. So assuming you put in the data right, it creates the journal entries correctly. We do have, and this is something that comes up often, is what about the fees, right? The fees associated with, processing payments. We actually will go and create, at least for our Stripe connection, we'll go and create the fee as its own GL batch, right, for every single transaction. So you'll have real time, view into how much Stripe is costing you for however many transactions you've done this month, right? And then obviously you can run reports and see that over time. So Mel, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, and if you can flip back to the deck, thank you everyone for hanging on for a few more minutes here. Maybe go over to the one where the QR code is. If you have any other follow-up questions, you have Chase's email. Hopefully you took a screenshot. If not, we will be sending you an email afterwards. So if there's any additional follow-up questions or something you wanted some more detail on, we can definitely hop on a call. Brent, who wasn't here, he's always happy to jump on a call and discuss your requirements in more detail. So whether it's Sage Intacct to HubSpot or one of the other many apps at your organization or your clients' organizations or our partners, give us a call, send us an email, jump on our website. We've got a bunch of resources out there, case studies, unique ways that we've helped automate other clients' businesses with these types of integrations. And so with that, I hope you learned something today, and thanks again for joining us. And thanks again, Chase. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.